Hi everyone, welcome to the second part of Sweet Memories of My Friend Elvis by Marilyn Demeter. In part 1, Marilyn told me all about when she met Elvis for the first time in 1955 and how their friendship blossomed. She spoke of being invited to Graceland at Christmas 1957 and how later on in 1969 she was instrumental in getting the script for Change of Habit to Elvis. In part 2, we pick up the story as Elvis returns to live performances in July of 1969. Marilyn recounts seeing him live at the Nassau Coliseum, Uniondale, meeting him before the show, and the hilarious first meeting between Elvis and her husband. So after 1969, as we know, he went back to live performances, and you saw him live a couple of times, did you?
I did. I never went to Vegas, but every show that he did in New York City, from Madison Square Garden to the Nassau Coliseum, I saw them. I was there for each one of them. And that was 72 and 75. And in 75, at the Nassau Coliseum, went backstage. And this is the first time he met my husband. Mm-hmm. And that's a funny story if you want to hear that.
Yeah, oh, yes, please. Yes.
He came out of the dressing room. This is before the show at the Nassau Coliseum, and we were there waiting for him outside. And he looks at me, and he knew, he wouldn't remember who I was. He knew me. And he looked over at my husband, and it was previous to this. I said, my husband's name was Leslie. I said, Les, do you know what you're going to say to Elvis when you meet him? Some people are pretty, you get tongue-tied. Mm. He said, no, don't worry about what I am. I'm going to say the right thing. Elvis puts his hand out to him, and he goes, my husband says to him, so you're the truck driver.
That's a great thing to say. That's a brilliant thing to say. I bet not many people said that to Elvis.
Exactly. I wanted to stay under the floor. And Elvis looked at him. He stopped for a second, and he grabbed him. He grabbed my husband, and he just put his arms around him, and he started to laugh. And just like you laughed, the way you laughed right now. And I thought, oh, God, you talk about egos with men. Oh my God!
I know it's funny. You were worried about your husband being tongue-tied when you met Elvis, but I know for a fact I would have just turned into some sort of stuttering idiot, or I would have fainted. One or the other.
Yeah, it's true. It's a lot of fainting.
Not just women.
Not just women. No, that's what's so wonderful about him is that men and women loved him dearly. Yeah. You can't just say he was old. No, he was a real man.
Yeah. So this was before the show. So you then watched the show, and did you did you get to meet Elvis after the 1975 show?
It was the night we went back to. He asked us to come back to his hotel. Mm-hmm. It was in between shows. That was the afternoon show. There was an evening show. So his show was at Kennedy. His hotel was near Kennedy Airport, where the plane was. And we went back. We went to his suite. And you know who was with him at that time? You've interviewed the girl, and excuse me for my mental state, I cannot remember her name. She was the beautiful girl with the long blonde hair. You've done an interview with her.
Oh, yeah. Diana Goodman.
Yes. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, my husband almost fell out of his jockey shorts. It was like Elvis had asked everyone to kind of leave us because he wanted to hear very much about my husband was Hungarian, and he was in the Hungarian Revolution. That's another story, and Elvis wanted to hear about it because I don't know if you know a part that Elvis played in the Hungarian Revolution.
Right.
And he asked people to please, he was going to send, I believe it was his whole salary at the time, for the people in in Hungary. And he asked people to please, if they could, send money to the, whatever it was, some organization that would take care of him. Well, when my husband left Hungary, he was in the revolution. He was one of the revolutionaries. He left Hungary, and he was put into a camp once he got out. My husband didn't speak English. He spoke French and German and Hungarian. And he was in the camp, and there were, I'm trying to think, was it the Red Cross or some organization that was there? And he had nothing. He had nothing but the clothes on his back, and it took him about 3 weeks to actually get out of Hungary. When he was in the camp, he needed toothbrushes, he needed combs, he needed everything, to take care of yourself, underwear, everything. Well, an American man handed him a paper bag that was filled with everything that he would need, or all the men there that were escapees. And my husband said thank you to him. And the man said, don't thank me, thank Elvis Presley. My husband had no idea what Elvis Presley was. It could have been, but he never forgot the name. It could have been a corporation. He always said it could have been a corporation. It could have been anything. I didn't know. But yes, that's what the man said to him. Thank Elvis Presley. And so he had gone to Canada first before he went to Bermuda. Long story short. That was it. So my husband always wanted to thank Elvis for whatever he did, and Elvis wanted to hear about it, and he was very interested, going back now to the hotel in at LaGuardia Airport, Kennedy Airport, excuse me, and that's what they talked about. He wanted to know all about it, and my husband got a chance to thank him. They talked about that, and then they went into a thing between the two of them, like who was the poorest, which was I'm watching these two men in my life that I love dearly, just conversing back and forth and laughing their heads off, a little off-color jokes, and it was I don't know, there was something they started on the outhouse. They didn't who had the worst outhouse experiences. I mean, this is the kind of guy that, here's Elvis Presley, the biggest star in the world, and they're talking about outhouses. It's amazing, but that's how Elvis was.
When you left after that visit in 1975, what did you think of Elvis? Because obviously you first met him in 1955, so you'd seen him, you'd known him for 20 years. How did you feel after that final visit?
I told my husband in the car that I didn't think he was going to live more than 5 years. Mm-hmm. And my husband said, "What?" I says, "No, there's something's not right." And I just felt it in my heart. I have deep feelings and deep emotional feelings for everyone. I've learned that I'm an empath, and I feel things deeply. Mm. I just said to myself, no, there's something that's just not right with him. And whether it was illness or things, I know he had glaucoma, but it was just something you just said he was failing. I just was my perception that he wasn't going to live 5 years, and he only lived 2 more. Mm. So I was right in that. But yeah.
Did you watch the Elvis in Concert movie 3 months? I think it aired in October of '77. Were you kind of shocked at the change in him between '75 and '77?
Yeah, sure. It was to me though. He looked like he was medicated, and I believe now, of course, that he had illnesses that he needed the medication for.
Yes.
As you live and you learn, my husband at an older age, he became sick, and he was given similar medications. He was given steroids and painkillers and all like that, and similar things happened to him. So that's how I feel about it. A lot of people say he wasn't ill. I think he was ill.
Well, I don't know if you're familiar with the book. I actually interviewed the author a few months ago of Destined to Die Young.
The Hodel book, is that the one about the gene, the
Yes,
genes?
yeah. I mean, what Sally said was that, a lot of his problems were actually hereditary.
I think it's a possibility, but there's not much. I don't know if she's proved it. Actually, it's her theory.
Hmm.
Um, she'd have to. I think she'd have to have somebody in the family have a DNA test to prove if that was there. But all of these theories that go around, there are so many theories, and will we ever know? I don't think so.
No, we'll never know categorically
Mm-mm.
why he had the problems he had. Now, my opinion on what killed Elvis was a heart attack. I mean, there's
Hmm.
always rumors floating around as it was an overdose, or the drugs killed him, or he was murdered, or something like that. But me personally, I believe that that's what took Elvis Presley was a heart attack.
I do too. For a while, to be perfectly honest, I thought it might be suicide.
Hmm.
I didn't know how he could go on stage after that horrible book was written. That had to be weighing at that time on him. I just think that that was a horrible thing for him to have to face. That plus his weight, and or not that I don't think that he actually was that heavy. I think that it was the steroids and the things that were being given to him
Yes.
that made him look that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
It was more bloating than fat because
Exactly.
he didn't have the appearance of somebody who is overweight. His limbs it just looked normal, like a normal weight person. It was like you say, it was the bloating in the stomach
Yes,
and the face, and also of course he had the colon problem as well.
yes, and I think that's what did the that had to be a terrible problem for
Mm.
him,
Yes,
and that's too personal. I mean, just it's awful that we even know that.
yes, I agree. Yeah. Um, where were you on the day that you found out that Elvis had died?
I was in my home, and I had for the afternoon I was on the phone talking to a friend who had just left the job. We were co-workers and best buddies, and she had just quit her job, and we were on the phone a good 2 hours. And during that conversation, someone was clicking into they were trying to get through to me, and what I said to her is, I said, somebody's trying to get either you or I. You hear the clicks in the phone? And she said, yeah. I says, well, I think we better get off.
Mm.
So I hung up the phone and I stood up. And with that, my husband comes running in the door. Now, my husband never came home in the afternoon. So for him to come and he just looked at me. He stood there. He was white as a ghost. And he stood there and he looked at me like, and I said, what's the matter? And he said, Elvis is dead.
Mm.
And I said, no. I says, no, no. I says, this goes on all the time. I says, how many times have we heard Elvis died?
Mm.
And that's not true. It's not. He said, it is. And he put on the television. He says, it's all over the television. And he put the television on, and I just, like you said, faint. I didn't faint, but I fell to my knees, and I just sobbed. And he stood there, and he tried to hold me, and I could see that for him, having only even met him once, it was like a brother to him then. And it was just horrible. And he said to me, why don't you go to Memphis? And I tried. I called the airlines right away. I wanted to go to Memphis to be there. And the planes were full. There was only, I believe, one flight out. And sure enough, well, we watched everything on television. But, and of course, I sent flowers, and we sent cards to Vernon. And we got beautiful thank you notes from everyone. They were very polite about it. Always, always thanking us for whatever we did for them. That's one thing about the Elvis family, the Presleys. They were very, very polite.
Hmm. Um, so there was, I always, one of the things that angers me about those following days after Elvis's death was even in death, there was no sort of privacy. There was the picture taken of Elvis in the casket, wasn't there, by a relative of his?
Yeah, cousin, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The front of the National Enquirer, wasn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought that was a very sad thing to do, but of course it was in exchange for money. There was money changed hands, people making money off Elvis. How do you think about how sort of Colonel Parker went on after Elvis's death? It was almost like you know Elvis's body might have died, but he's still very much alive. I think he got that right, though, didn't he? As bad as it sounds, he probably realized that it wasn't the end. When Elvis died, it wasn't the end.
Oh no, no, no. He knew exactly what he had to do. The thing that I resent is that he tried to get everything away from Vernon.
Hmm.
He wanted it all, I think. But in that way, I have to thank Priscilla for fighting Parker on those different things.
Yes, yes.
Um, I don't think Vernon had the ability. He was beyond, I mean, he was just destroyed emotionally, physically.
Well,
But
he would have got him obviously at a very vulnerable time, and we do know that Vernon trusted Tom Parker a lot. It's been said that he was grateful to Tom Parker for getting them what he promised, because I think he promised Elvis that he would be a millionaire by the end of 1956, and
uh-huh.
and as we know, he was a millionaire over and over and over again.
Yes, that's true. He did. That's what Elvis's loyalty was. He did for him what he said he was going to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Absolutely right.
we know that there was a couple of occasions where Elvis wanted to get rid of Tom Parker, and he did at one time say, "Right, that's it, it's all over." But Tom Parker sort of drew up an account of what he said Elvis owed him, and at the time, Vernon and Elvis, they just didn't know where they were going to get the money from, so it was sort of all forgotten,
Yeah,
unfortunately. Unfortunately.
yeah. He would have been much better off at a certain point without him. It may have been when he came back from Europe. When he came back, when he realized, I think, that he couldn't travel to Europe, he should have been more wise. That there was more of a reason why he couldn't go. That would have been so exhilarating for him to have gone to England, to have gone to Europe, to have gone to Japan, wherever he wanted to go, because he had fans, phenomenal fans all over the world.
Mm.
And he's probably the only great star that wasn't able to travel out of the country. That's what he should have realized.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest regrets of Elvis fans that he didn't tour outside of America.
Yeah, exactly. And that was all because of Parker.
Mm.
Um, Parker not being able to leave the country and not be able to get a passport.
It's funny. I mean, I'm sure somebody could have represented Colonel Parker outside of the United States, but obviously Colonel Parker just didn't want to trust anybody with the job.
No, I think that's true. He had to be hands-on, and he was watching all the money.
Mm.
Did you hear the interview with what's his name? Another entrepreneur who put Elvis into into his concerts. Was it Jerry Weinstein?
Oh no, I spoke to Charles Stone
What?
there a few weeks ago because Charles did work representing Elvis in the concerts, but no,
Uh-huh.
not I haven't heard the one with Jerry. No.
Well, he tells the story of how Parker gave him a suitcase full of cash after the first concert, and that was all the money from the memorabilia, from the from all the artifacts, the programs, and everything that Parker made the money on, and he split that with Jerry Weinstein. And Elvis got none of that. And I think that's part of, I mean, I'm just telling you that because I try to think that had they gone overseas, that's why Parker wanted to always be there. There was so much cash that was, that was made, and that was part of what, and he took it all. Parker took all of that cash.
Oh, I must admit, I hadn't heard that story, no.
Yeah, it's, he tells a story how they divided up the money from the concert. He tells how it was to deal with Parker. It's an interesting video that he gave Jerry Weinstein half, and then Parker took half, and then gave Elvis half of Parker's. But then all of the extra cash money that came in from the concessions was Parker's.
Right.
So Elvis of that, and yet out of Elvis's money, he had to pay his band, he had to pay all his people, and that's why I think in the end Elvis could have had so much more had he had a regular manager, or that wouldn't have happened. As a matter of fact, my boss told me that would never have happened. When they heard how much Parker was getting, they thought it was an abomination. That Elvis would even go along with that.
Yeah.
But Elvis wasn't a businessman.
No. He was an entertainer. He kind of he left the money side to Vernon and Tom Parker. As long as the money was there, every time he wanted to buy something or wanted to go somewhere or so forth, then he was happy, I suppose.
Yes, he did what he wanted. He had enough what he wanted.
Yeah. So after Elvis passed, what have you been doing with yourself since those that terrible day?
Since then, I didn't really get back into the Elvis world much. Went on with my life, had children, raised them, and then when my husband passed in 2015. Then I was advised to find myself again because I adored my husband. And I said to myself, how do I find myself again? So let me get back into maybe what I was before and try to find myself again. And I got back into the Elvis world, and that's where I saw online and all of these fan clubs that had started up again and all these people. And then as I read more and more, I said, there's so many lies, so many misconceptions that this is all, it's gone way overboard. It's can't be done anymore. We've got to do something about getting the truth out, what he was about. And that's what I said, I think, in the beginning when I started talking to you. I feel his spirit. I feel that although he died, he had such a tremendous spiritual thing going that he's still in that way, he's with us. And you can't forget him once you knew him, and I don't think anyone has.
Have you been to Graceland since it opened in 1982?
No, my daughter was there 2 or 3 years ago. She told me all about it, and no, I hadn't. And she said it was phenomenal to see all of the displays and everything, but I wouldn't want to go back. No,
because they actually say that you can feel his presence in Graceland to this day.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, I could feel it. I could feel it when I went. Definitely. Obviously, the place I could feel it the most was actually in the meditation garden.
Yeah. I would love to be there, and maybe someday I will. Before I go, before I pass on. But yeah, it's very sad. I get very emotional about it, and
As you say, it's sad that there's. You actually said to me in the messages you wrote to me just prior to this interview that the salacious rumors that plague Elvis to this day, especially the ones about. I can hardly say this. The pedophilia.
Yes. Oh, I thank you for bringing that up, Steve. More and more on my internet feed, and for people that I know that I speak to, family people and all that, they will bring this up to me because it's coming up a lot.
Hmm.
And it seems that they've given up on Michael Jackson and saying that, and now they want it to be Elvis. For some reason, people have these horrible minds, and they don't realize the context of the times. I believe it more or less started with Priscilla, that these rumors started that she was so young, that and things that she has said in her book and she has said on television, which she has now changed. My husband was 10 years older than I was. Elvis was 10 years older than I was, but it wasn't like in the beginning. Let's say in the beginning, remember I said he was a high school kid when he started out. He wasn't a grown man. He was a high school kid. He liked young girls. Why wouldn't he? I mean, if you were living in that time, there was no. It wasn't a bad thing. Today, now in 2021, it seems it's an absolute horror to go out with someone who's younger than you. And they've turned this into something that's really not fair. It's not right. I don't want it to be his legacy. It's got to stop.
I truly believe that it won't. There'll be a time when even the media will see the futility of bringing it up every few months, making another attempt to try and besmirch his name. It's been tried before and it's failed, and I believe it will again.
I sure hope so, Steve. I think you may be the best outlet for doing that, for maybe interviewing if you could get in Margaret and all the other ones to speak about this. That he was a very he was a very decent person. Like I said, he has strong religious beliefs, very strong religious beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So many people want to believe the worst. Some people want to make him into Jesus Christ, and some people want to make him Beelzebub.
Yeah.
And he was neither. You know, he was a human being. He was a man like you are, Steve. He was a man like my husband was.
Yeah.
And that's really what he was. Humble, as you said you said the right word, humble.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you're saying 100%. But as you know, it will continue for a while because, unfortunately, it sells papers. It gets clicks on the internet, and there will also be a minority of people who believe everything that's written in the press.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that Priscilla may be the one to stop it?
Yes.
I often wonder why she doesn't come forward. I mean, it certainly isn't up to Lisa to say anything. It's up to her because she has changed her story. And I do believe it started there. And then with some other fellow who is in Alana Nash's books, Brian Raphael. And he also has said some things that are absolute lies about Elvis, that he had an affair with Marilyn Monroe, which is absolutely ridiculous. And that he had young girls up to his room all day. He did not. He did not.
Yes, unfortunately, there'll always be those sort of rumors going around that, just rumors. That's what they are.
Mm-hmm. And you have to stop it. Someone had told me, which I hadn't known, is that when Jimmy Carter was president, now that was in the 70s, about the time that Elvis died. Before that, Carter had asked him to be an ambassador for the youth. And Elvis would have accepted. And then when they found out the things about drugs and that was all this, that it was pulled back from him and he wasn't allowed to do it. That was another thing.
Mm.
I don't think Elvis, to call him an addict is not the right thing, because we get a different interpretation of an addict. I think he was sick and he became addicted to the drugs that he was given. Heroin or any of those drugs.
Yeah, the street drugs, the thing we sort of associate as being an addict. Yeah, I mean, he needed those drugs to keep going. They were prescription drugs for legitimate health issues, which is completely different to being an addict. However, he did unfortunately become to rely on them. That's the difference.
Exactly. I love the way you put it. That's right. And he couldn't give them up. They made him feel good, and he had to perform every single day of his life. He had to look great, and he had to, that's what I mean when people don't understand about that life. He couldn't go out in public ever with unshaven or disheveled like everyone else can. It was just to keep that up, to keep how he looked up, and his body and the thinness. That was another thing too with the movies. He had to be so thin, and that basically wasn't his body type. Constantly wanted him to be thin.
And of course, as he got older, it does get harder to keep the weight off. And I'm speaking from sort of personal.
Of course.
I was as thin as a rake when I was younger, but it's starting to thicken up a little bit around the waist, so it's not easy. Okay, so it's really been lovely speaking with you, Marilyn. I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you very, very much. Is there anything you'd like to say about Elvis, just to round off the conversation?
I would like to say something about his generosity and the things that he would like to have done in his name. Many people, they send flowers to Graceland on his birthday and on the day of his death and all. And I think that Memphis, as you know, has gone from, it was the Queen City when in the 50s and 60s. It was a beautiful, beautiful city. It has diminished terribly right now, and there's a lot of crime. If people could use their powers, the fans could use their powers to do something to bring Memphis back, and to do charitable work in his name and do good deeds for people in his name, I think that would be the better legacy of everything, and let it be known that that's who they're doing it for, because that would be the legacy I think that he would have wanted.
Yeah, well, you and I are going to try and keep this legacy going as long as we can. I often think, I'd like to try and turn as many young people onto Elvis Presley, because, me and you aren't going to be around forever, and we'd like to really sort of pass the baton on to another generation, a younger generation of fans. So that's what I'd like to try and do as well, is try and get as many new fans as possible through this channel and just other things as well.
I know you will, because you'll be here quite a bit longer than I will. But I know in my estimation, you're doing the best job possible. You have the most interesting people. Everyone has their own perception of what it was like, and it's so nice to see how people feel and what they lived with and saw, and it all brings us to him, but through everybody else's point of view. And then there's some other people too online who tried desperately to get his Black Lives Matter to Elvis, that group. That's a wonderful. Are you on that with them?
I don't think I am. No.
That's a magnificent group that set out to prove that Elvis was not a racist. That's another untruth about him.
That's totally ridiculous. I don't even know how that got any traction whatsoever.
You may want to join that to see how that goes, because there is unbelievable amount of proof. His friendship with Muhammad Ali, how deep that was, with James Brown and all the different Sammy Davis Jr. All they have everything that they said about him and their relationship and how it went. And it's a beautiful thing to know, because that should not be known either. That should not be the way it is. He was not a racist. For a Southern boy to have evolved that much, because he grew up with black people.
Yes, yeah. He thought a lot of Roy Hamilton. That was another person he thought a lot of.
And think of what he did for Jackie Wilson.
Jackie Wilson, yeah.
And all of those, Sam Cooke, all of those people.
Yeah.
They were his buddies, more or less. Too bad he didn't hang with them more than he did with who he was with. I am so comfortable. I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's why I say, and I'll say it again, it's just absolutely ridiculous to even contemplate that Elvis could have been racist.
Yeah, that's got to stop.
Yeah.
And if people want to do something wonderful, if they have money that they want to spend, there is a Hungarian fan club group from Hungary who's trying desperately to put a bronze statue in a park that's it's in Budapest, and the park is named Elvis Presley Park because of what he did for if they would like to do something, if they could help out getting that, I would really love that.
Brilliant. And they can probably find the details online about that, can they?
Yes, they can Google probably Hungarian fan club, and it will pop up, and then on that site you will see the way to get some money for them to get the bronze statue up in the park. I mean, for the Hungarian people to actually want a park, that shows how much Elvis did for them.
Yes.
And if I thank God that my husband had the ability to be able to. Elvis never would have known unless my husband had told him what that meant. And that was it's not the nicest thing that I think we did for him was that.
So the Hungarian, just tell me one more time.
You can, I believe, Google a Hungarian fan club, and it will come up.
Okay.
And you will see the advertising on there for the statue. And I can always put it up on my site and can send it to you.
Yes, please. Yeah. Oh, another question I wanted to ask as well is, have you any photographs of you and Elvis?
I did, and in my travels between New York and Bermuda and the lifestyle that they have, basically the pictures that I have disappeared.
Yeah.
There weren't many.
Yeah.
There weren't many, and they were all taken, of course, when I first met him, I didn't have a camera with me. At other times, they just, whatever I had, and there weren't many because I just wasn't that way. I wasn't that kind of a fan with him that, I got to take my picture with you. Yeah. It was a little bit different for me.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't shy, but it was just different. So the few that I had, everything that I had from the fan clubs were all put away when I left for Bermuda, and somehow basically everything disappeared. Which is tragic for me because it's hard for me without pictures to prove that what I'm saying is true. If you have a picture, people, okay, yeah. But
well, these things happen, and lots of things always go missing in a move. Anyway, I can attest to that.
And it didn't, like I said, it wasn't that important to me until my husband passed, that I go, oh, where is that stuff? Where did it go?
Thank you very much, Marilyn, for your time. It really is appreciated, and please keep safe. Thank you very much.
Steve, thank you for this opportunity. Bless you, and you stay safe also.
A huge thanks to Marilyn for sharing her Elvis stories with me. Please check out the links in the description box below about the Elvis Presley Park in Budapest that Marilyn spoke about. Don't forget to join me live on YouTube every Wednesday and Sunday for Elvis Fan Chat, the Elvis Fan of the Month quiz, with a monthly prize to be won for the most correct answers, and find out what song I have chosen as Elvis's Song of the Week. Until then, stay safe, and I hope you'll join me next time for another episode from Elvis the Ultimate Fan Channel.